I should say up front, I'm not an alcoholic, which is something an alcoholic would probably say. I'm not an alcoholic. It's impossible to say I'm not an alcoholic without sounding a little like an alcoholic, especially if you're saying it into a mirror. I'm not an alcoholic. And you're not an alcoholic. We should get a drink together. Celebrate not being alcoholic.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Gaffigan!
You may be wondering, why do an entire show about bourbon? Well, let me tell you, no one asked for it. No one came up to me and like, when are you going to do a stand-up set about America's native spirit? I'm mentally ill. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. I'm going to be talking about bourbon for 30 minutes straight, all right, which is essentially what bourbon drinkers do a couple times a day. All right? Most of these jokes are going to be about bourbon and whiskey. If you're looking for a brandy or a tequila joke, that's another comedian processing a different form of denial. Here's how we landed here. During the pandemic, I got really into gardening and bourbon. And what I learned over the past couple years is no one cares about gardening. So here we are. Ideally, you should be 21 to hear these jokes, but in a perfect world, we'd all be 21. Forever. But life doesn't work like that, which is why Jesus invented bourbon. Right? I assume some of you don't drink, or maybe you no longer drink. That's a chapter of your life you put behind you. I guess what I'm trying to say is, come on back. You proved your point. Get off the wagon. Wagons are for children. I never understood that on the wagon, off the wagon. Why do these drunks keep getting on and off my wagon? All I know is if you're still traveling by wagon, you deserve a drink. If your view is a horse's ass, you need something to take the edge off. For the record, I would never encourage anyone to drink alcohol unless they want to have fun. Alcohol can be fun. It can loosen you up. You lose your inhibitions and sometimes your career and family. The great irony is when I met my wife, I didn't drink at all. My two older children never saw me have a beer until they were in high school. And now I have my own bourbon. I would never say my kids are the reason I drink, but they are why I get drunk. It is weird how adults talk to children about alcohol. Like, we're never honest. It's like, Daddy, why do you drink? Well, it's the only thing I like about being alive. Here's looking at you, kid. I'm kidding. Kind of. But I will occasionally have a bourbon every night. I don't drink bourbon every day. That would be ridiculous. It's just at night. But I only have 2 bourbons, just 2. And after that, I lose count. Because I like a high proof with a heavy pour. I'm a proof whore. Now, I'm not a bourbon expert, but I'm annoying in other ways. Yeah? Yeah. And I'm not trying to say all bourbon experts are annoying, but if you're annoying, you probably know a lot about bourbon. But I get it. Bourbon is interesting. Bourbon is a uniquely American whiskey, right? To be called bourbon, it must be made in the United States with 51% corn and consumed by a man who's out of shape. In a way, I'm being patriotic. That's why I don't drink vodka. I'm not a communist. Now, if you talk about bourbon, you have to include rye, right? Bourbon and rye, they're like whiskey roommates, right? They're genetically similar. If they took a 23andMe, they'd be like, oh my God, we're totally related. If bourbon and rye are siblings, then Tennessee whiskey is bourbon's twin brother who changed his name so he could become a country music star. Right? Now, I like Tennessee whiskey because I like bourbon. Tennessee whiskey is just that kid that needed to be told they were special. Right? I'm different from bourbon, aren't I, Mama? Yes, you are. You're my Lincoln County bundle of joy. Now, there are whiskeys from throughout the world, right? There's Scotch whiskey, there's Irish whiskey, Canadian, Indian, wherever the English invaded. Those people were like, we need some damn whiskey. To be called Scotch whiskey, it must be made in Scotland, but there, they just call it whiskey. In fact, in Scotland, Scotch is a derogatory term or a type of tape. Here's an interesting fact. Scotch whiskey and Scotch tape taste the same. It's like we're wrapping Christmas presents. Whiskey, of course, is part of the spirits industry. It's called the spirits industry because you're often haunted by the decisions you make. No, I didn't. As a result, the spirits industry advocates for responsible drinking. They'll put that in ads, drink responsibly. No other American industry discourages overconsumption. Right? McDonald's is never like, hey, fat ass, take it easy on the fries. Ben & Jerry's doesn't tell people, Tubby, that pint is not a single serving. Taco Bell doesn't print on their wrappers, enjoy your diarrhea. And they should. Whiskey is one of the spirits which improves with age, right? That's why there are names like Old Forester, Old Granddad, or Old Dirty Bastard. Age is a positive, right? This doesn't apply to many of the things we consume. You never hear someone say, I bought this tuna salad on the day my daughter was born. And when she turns 21, we're gonna crack it open. I'm detecting notes of botulism. This is usually the point where people go, why? Why so many jokes about whiskey? Well, there's a reason. My accountant told me if I talk about something in my stand-up, I can write it off on my taxes. So that's why I'd like to discuss the following. Give me some time here. Pappy 23, President's Choice, and King of Kentucky. Those are some of my favorite bourbons, and I'm aware even having one favorite bourbon is concerning, and having multiple favorite bourbons is probably a sign that I have a discerning palate. But bourbon drinkers, favorite can have different meanings, right? Favorite can be your favorite casual drinking bourbon, your favorite bourbon you use in a mixer, or your favorite bourbon you enjoy when someone else is paying. Right? You know, I was lucky enough, I got to co-headline some shows with Jerry Seinfeld, and now, I don't know if you know, but Jerry Seinfeld is extremely poor. No, Jerry did very well. Jerry doesn't really drink, but he knows I enjoy bourbon. And after our Charlotte show, Jerry, we were checking into our hotel, and there was a bar in the lobby, and Jerry said, hey, why don't we get a drink? You could get a bourbon. Jerry actually sounds like that. As we walked in the bar, I saw this wall of 100 bottles. And at the top, there was a bottle of King of Kentucky, which is very rare. I had never tried it. Among bourbon nerds, it's considered a unicorn. It's impossible to find. And I thought, oh, I'd love to get King of Kentucky. But I realized it would be 75, maybe $100 a glass. And then I realized, you know what? Jerry Seinfeld can handle that. As we sat down, Jerry said, yeah, whatever you want. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna. Jerry got a Cavassier. I ordered the King of Kentucky. And I saw this waitress climb this ladder up and grab this beautiful bottle. And she brought it down and she poured it and she handed it to me and I tasted it. And it was pure euphoria. I felt like I was the King of Kentucky. Which is ridiculous because we all know that's Colonel Sanders. Right? I then had this epiphany. I should have Jerry Seinfeld try King of Kentucky. Jerry will become a bourbon drinker because of me. Then we can go out drinking expensive bourbon and Jerry can pay for it. I said, Jerry, you gotta try this. Jerry tasted it and he said, I don't like it, it's not good, but get another one if you want. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna. So I got another one and it was even better. Then the check came and Jerry was looking at it strangely and I said, is there a problem? And Jerry said, your King of Kentucky's cost $500 a pop. Now there are a couple of things you can do in that situation. I should point out Jerry's a friend, but more importantly, he's someone I respect. So I could have said, Jerry, that's ridiculous. Let me pay. But all I said was, sorry, Jerry. Boom, ba-dum, boom, ba-da-da-da. It was like I was in my own personal Seinfeld episode. It's crazy. That's a true story. That's a true story. The only thing I made up is I've never met Jerry Seinfeld. No, the only thing I changed is Jerry actually loved King of Kentucky. But I think the story is better when he has to pay for something he didn't even like. And that's where comedy is similar to bourbon. The story behind it doesn't have to be totally true. Like there's a lot of stories in bourbon, and some of them are colorful and some of them are just made up. Right? There's a saying, bourbon is 51% corn and 49% BS. And half that's true. Like Elijah Craig, the father of bourbon. The father of bourbon. Is he the father? Let's just say Maury Povich wasn't around then. Elijah Craig, you are not the father. Now, some of the bourbon BS is more audacious. There was a time when bourbon and whiskey was sold in the United States as medicine. It was considered medicinal, meaning it had healing properties. And I know there's probably parents of teenagers that are like, Jim, bourbon absolutely has healing properties. But really, it comes down to story. Story is intrinsic to bourbon, right? So many people believe there's in every bottle of bourbon, there's a story. And as you drink that bottle, that story becomes much more interesting. And when you finish the bottle, you're like, what was the story? And then you have to do it all again. Now, you may be curious who these two men are. They're my dads. No, whiskey in America has many famous men and women, and these are just two of them, right? This is George Garvin Brown, who invented the color brown. For years, people were like, what is that, dark tan? And he was like, no, it's brown. No, George Garvin Brown started Brown-Forman with another guy named George Foreman, who was famous for his grill. No. George Garvin Brown, in 1870, started a bourbon called Old Forester, which is named after Dr. William Forester, who was a famous Civil War surgeon. And George wanted a famous doctor to endorse his bourbon. So he got Dr. Forester, who by today's standards would be like Dr. Oz or Dr. Phil, if they were respected. Right? Now, some of the stories are just clever marketing, right? There's a bourbon where all the barrels are aged on a ship at sea. It's called Jefferson Ocean, right? Now, Jefferson has other brands. I should probably say these out loud so I can write them off. There's Jefferson Reserve, Jefferson Tropics, Jefferson Airplane, which changed its name to Jefferson Starship. They really jumped the shark when they came out with that song, "We Built This City on Source Barrels." By the way, if you get any of those jokes, that means you're old. Jim, let me enjoy that damn jokes. I do love Jefferson. There's another bourbon where all the barrels listen to Metallica. I'm not making that up. The barrels only listen to Metallica when they're around their friends. When they're alone, a lot of Boy George. Do you really wanna? I'm just gonna do this the rest of the show. But in both examples, those two are. It's how the barrels are reacting to the vibrations, either from being at sea or responding to the music, that will change the taste of the bourbon. Now, this barrel, which is full, by the way, has been exposed to my stand-up. And therefore should taste hilarious. Now, that's an interesting backstory, right? But we all collectively know it's also horseshit, which would be a great name for a bourbon. Have you tried Jim Gaffigan's horseshit? It's unbelievably smooth. And when you saw the price, you'd be like, that's hysterical. The only well, there's many problems we would have with horseshit bourbon, one of which is the name. But also, it would be a celebrity spirit, which, I mean, come on, those are the worst. And I understand, I get it, why someone would be offended by a celebrity spirit. Who are these interlopers that are coming in, having an ego trip in the middle of my industry? Why would a 8-time Grammy nominee, multi-Emmy winning, New York Times best-selling author, why would he want to slum with trash like us? Well, I like you little people. I do love the bourbon industry. It's, you know, I've been just a couple years, but the welcoming and just there's this etiquette and civility that I think America could learn so much from. Like, you know, when Heaven Hill burnt down, the rest of the bourbon industry stepped right up and said, hope you have insurance. No. They said, you can make your bourbon here, which is amazing. It's amazing. And I just want you to know the generosity that you've shown me. And if I ever run into you outside of Kentucky, I just want you to know that I'll act like I don't know you. But I do love your bourbon. Because drinking bourbon makes me feel like a man. I'm not trying to alienate the women here, but fellas, wouldn't you agree bourbon is kind of like our Shania Twain song? Come on, fellas. Bourbon is the easiest way to feel like a man. Like, you don't need to fix a car or chop down a tree. You just need to drink bourbon. You just need to go like this. Look at how manly that looks. Bourbon brings men together. Men need that. Women are social. Women, any excuse. You want to get coffee? Let's get coffee. Men, there needs to be a reason. You want to get coffee? Why? There needs to be an activity. That's why men go hunting. We go fishing. We go golfing. Do you think those men who play golf, you think they enjoy golf? They're not good at it. They don't even like the guys they're with. They're just desperate to get away from their families. But bourbon facilitates a unique manly bonding. Bourbon allows men to gather with other men away from their wives in basements and show each other bottles and have manly conversations about viscosity and mouthfeel and unicorns. And then those men can kiss. Because bourbon is gay. When a guy says he's really into bourbon, he's saying, I'm gay. I'm just saying. Of course, women love bourbon too, right? Women love bourbon. You know, there are brilliant female master distillers, incredible female blenders, and science has proven that women have a better palate than men, right? That's been proven that women can pick up the smallest detail and harp on it. And refuse to let it. I'm talking about bourbon. This is science. No, supposedly women can pick up different details and bring it up much later on. When you thought you've moved on, they're like, no, I'm going to bring it up again. Okay, now that I've alienated half the audience, and probably the people who bought the tickets. But whiskey and bourbon does have this male association. Some of it's historical, some of it's marketing, some of it's coincidence, right? Like there's a rye whiskey called Thomas H. Handy, which is very expensive. And if you're into whiskey, you probably asked yourself, would I pay $400 for a Handy? My wife would kill me. I really want a Handy. If she finds out, I could just say, I'm going to give the Handy to a friend. But that's not even the weirdest name for a whiskey. There's a whiskey called Chicken Cock. Chicken Cock. That's the name. Which sounds like an insult a seventh grader would come up with. Oh, yeah? Well, you're a chicken cock. I don't know how they expect us to go into a bar and order that. You know, I want a chicken cock. Buddy, you're in the wrong bar. But the brand has that name because when it was introduced in the 1800s, people didn't say rooster. They said hen or chicken cock until people were like, you got to stop saying that. Some people believe that the rooster or the chicken cock, if you will, is how we came up with the term cocktail. Some people believe the initial cocktail was the drink you would have in the morning after a night of heavy drinking. It was the drink you'd have in the morning that would allow you to cock out your tail and face the day. And I heard that and I was like, how much were these people drinking? I mean, I have 2 bourbons and I can't walk the next day. I know that as hair of the dog, right? Hair of the dog, which is the theory that the cure for a hangover from drinking too much alcohol is to drink more alcohol. Now, the fact that everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about and has tried that is why we as a species will be extinct. It's sad. Bourbon and whiskey, there's They have their own lingo, right? You don't have a glass of bourbon, you have a pour of bourbon. Pour, it's very caveman. You pour, me drink. I like, Sometimes bourbon is referred to as juice. How much juice is in the barrel? Is there juice? So if I drink a bottle of bourbon every day for 6 days straight, technically that's a juice cleanse. Right? At this point, I'm less concerned about the amount of bourbon I drink and more worried about the number of bottles I've acquired. I've started to collect bourbon, which is gotta be a red flag, right? I mean, were there any signs he had a problem? I mean, besides the thousands of bottles, no. But you rationalize, right? You rationalize. You're like, you know what? People collect different things. Some people collect sneakers. Some people collect action figures. In a way, bourbon bottles are like action figures filled with liquor. And similar to action figures, each bourbon has their own personality. It's like, oh no, Booker's is taking on Wild Turkey. I'm higher proof. I'm older. I have a drinking problem. But it's gonna be okay. Really, I have a bourbon problem. It's a bourbon obsession. And as I look out in the audience, I see there's some other men who obviously have a bourbon obsession. Either that or they've stopped caring what they look like. There's a lot of overlap. There is a certain look to a bourbon obsessed guy. Like if you're over the age of 30, out of shape with a beard, and you don't drink bourbon, you're a fraud. That's called stolen valor. Which would be another great name for a bourbon. Have you tried the horse shit, stolen valor? No, collecting. If you do collect bourbon, that means you will hunt for bourbon, which sounds active and almost dangerous, but primarily involves browsing in liquor stores. Like you never see a National Geographic on bourbon hunting. Armed only with his credit card and the knowledge his wife doesn't know where he is. Jim forages into bourbon's natural habitat. It's a pretty generous use of the term hunt, right? Especially considering the bottles aren't hiding or trying to get away. A bourbon hunt is much closer to an Easter egg hunt. If all the eggs were put in the carton and handed to the person. I won! There are stages to a bourbon obsession, right? The first stage is the awakening. You try bourbon and you realize not all hard liquor needs to taste like lighter fluid. The next stage is you try premium bourbon, which propels you to the third stage, which is collecting. But you tell yourself you're not going to overdo it, just a couple bottles. You're not going to sleep out in your car for a rare release or hide a purchase from your wife. And then the fourth stage, you sleep out in your car and you hide a purchase from your wife. The final stage of a bourbon obsession is you start watching YouTube videos of other men hunt for bourbon. Now, I understand that may sound pathetic, but believe me, it's much worse. In these videos, this guy, middle-aged guy, out of shape, if you can picture that, he just goes into liquor stores and comments on the bourbon selection. He's like, that one's all right, that's overrated. I'm watching an alcoholic shop. And it is riveting and informative. And I tell you, after I watch a couple of these videos, I realize a porn addiction would be less embarrassing. What are you doing? Nothing. Clear browser history. Now, I know that's been a lot of bourbon talk, so now I'd like to talk about something that I think we'd all find fascinating. Liquor stores. I do love liquor stores. I love how liquor stores always have super creative names like Discount Liquors, Bob's Bargain Depot. Like, you would never eat in a restaurant named Discount Beef. I knew he was serious when he took me to Discount Beef. Occasionally, liquor stores will have cute, clever names. In New York, where I live, there's a liquor store called City Slickers with a Q. City Slickers. Hysterical. But the name of a liquor store has no effect on the business. No one's walking by City Slickers and thinking, well, I don't drink alcohol, but I sure love a Billy Crystal movie. Maybe I should start. No, liquor stores know. They know they don't have to try to get customers. We're coming. They could name a liquor store Loser Depot. People would be like, wow, I gotta go in there anyway. Maybe that's a French name, Loser Depot. I love the aesthetic inside of a liquor store. It's almost as if some interior designer was like, what if the whole store looked like the back room? We want people to feel like they're in an episode of Hoarders. There's a silence you only find in liquor stores. You ever notice that? People walk around all serious, like they're in an art gallery. Interesting. Maybe this will make the pain go away. Liquor stores have their own vibe, right? There's a decidedly divorced dad energy. Right? A stack of boxes suddenly becomes a shelf. It's not dirty, but it's certainly not clean. Things are handwritten, crossed out. You feel like you've stumbled upon a garage sale in a bus station. It's just not welcoming. Even the placement of the bottle seems a little insulting. The less expensive ones down low. It's the store's way of saying, bend your knee. The more expensive bottles up high, it's out of your reach. The super rare bottles are always in a glass trophy case. I was looking at it like, well, I guess if I work hard on my drinking, I could get there. The only reason to go to a liquor store is alcohol. There's no other reason to be there. You can be like, do you guys sell flowers? It's my anniversary. I guess I could get her a rosé. Maybe it doesn't. Some liquor stores offer free samples of alcohol during the day. They pass it out like it's an ice cream shop. I have not been drinking, officer. I was sampling, which, as you know, doesn't count. I appreciate the liquor store employees. They always offer their unbiased advice, right? Well, what we're trying to get rid of, what we like. That's an interesting career choice, liquor store employee. You know, like, what's that interview like? Oh, I see here you have a couple DUIs. Some major gaps in your employment history? When can you start showing up late? Please observe our employee dress code. When have you slept in last night? I can never tell who works at the liquor store. I'm like, do you work here or are you about to rob me? Liquor stores offer a store pick, right? Which is kind of like a bookstore staff pick, right? But in a bookstore, you might think, oh, wow, this guy John really liked this book. But in a liquor store, you're like, oh, wow, this guy John's gonna have liver failure. In a way, bookstores are like the opposite of liquor stores, right? You go to a bookstore to enrich your life. There's even a self-help section. But a liquor store is like an enormous self-destruct section. They might as well greet people. How can I help you? Are you looking for your wife to leave you or just lose your job? Both. We've got just a thing. It's called Fireball. Now, if you've never tried Fireball, that means you're leading a productive life. If you do drink Fireball, I don't want you to feel bad, but obviously you do. You're drinking Fireball. What a metaphor for your life. Your life is a ball on fire. It just tastes like cinnamon gum that a drunk guy chewed on. It's not even whiskey, Fireball. Technically, it's liquid regret. No, it's flavored whiskey. Flavored whiskey. There's banana flavored whiskey. There's peanut butter flavored, apple flavored. All the variety a preschooler's looking for. Liquor store employees will make suggestions. They'll make recommendations. That's part of the job task, right? I mean, bartenders also do that. I can never get a bartender's attention, at least with a waiter, you can give that check signal. Can I have my check? But with a bartender, you can't be like, of course, the highest status suggester of liquors is the sommelier, which is a French word meaning know-it-all. I don't understand the premise behind a sommelier. It's like, so when we go out to dinner, we're so intimidated by the task of selecting a wine, we need a private tutor? Like people are like, I'd like to use my lifeline. Is there a functional drunk here who's maybe tried all of these? Someone who could be condescending but also make me feel cheap? Is that person here? I've only had a couple interactions with sommeliers, but they always make me feel like a child. Even when the waiter offers it, would you like to see our sommelier? They're like, would you like us to get the wine, Daddy? You want some help picking stuff out? Yeah, these kids will have their chicken fingers in the Chablis, right? You guys want some coloring books? Thanks, Wine Daddy. Sommeliers, they always recommend the expensive wine, right? I'm always like, well, that's an interesting choice, but I'm looking for a wine that only has 2 digits next to it. Preferably the first number would be a 1. Do you have anything from that region? There are moments when you're forced to consider how much alcohol you consume, right? Like when you go to the doctor's office and you have to fill out that form. That could feel like a reckoning. Because all the other questions are so easy, any allergies? No. Any recent surgeries? No. How many alcoholic drinks a week? You're like, why do you need to know? Who made this form? My mom? How many a week? So we're not counting weekends. All right. I'm going to put down some. My alcohol consumption will vary week to week, right? Depending if I'm celebrating something like someone's birthday or the fact it's dark outside. Yeah. Apparently, alcohol consumption among adults has dropped dramatically, right? There was a Gallup poll that found that only 54% of adults in America drink alcohol. And I heard that and I was like, I can't believe that many people smoke pot. Apparently, at its peak, 71% in 1980 of adults drink alcohol. And I heard that and I was like, that feels low. Because when I was growing up, it seemed like adults were drinking all day long. Like every moment had an excuse to have a drink. Like, this is my before dinner drink. This is my wine with dinner. This is my after dinner drink. Anything to not have to count how many you've had. Right? Like, this is not my 8th drink. This is my first dessert wine. Who wants to get a nightcap? If you do ever worry that you drink too much, here's all you have to do. Just go to an airport bar at 8 a.m. I guarantee your only takeaway will be, I'm doing great. Because in the morning, in airport bars, people are getting loaded. And they are not being shy about it. Yeah, I'll have a Jack and Coke. You know you're in public right now. The Today Show is still on the TV screen. Al Roker hasn't done the weather yet, and you're kind of slurring your words, fella. Air travel has this symbiotic relationship with alcohol. It's not just the airport bar. They serve drinks on the plane. If you've ever sat in first class, sometimes they offer you champagne. Would you like some champagne? Oh, what are we celebrating? Not being a coach? There's a direct association. There's even the airplane bottle. The airplane bottle. No other form of transportation has their own size bottle. Right? There's no motorcycle bottle. There's no ship bottle. Ships, they don't even know what to do with a bottle. Sometimes they put a ship inside the bottle. Tell me that guy wasn't drunk. Oh, you wanted the bottle on the ship. I do love those airplane bottles. Whenever I'm on a plane, I always act like I'm like a giant. I'm like, ooh, ooh, I always seem to get the armrest after that. Those airplane bottles, they are adorable, right? It looks like Jack Daniels had a litter, right? Like, how could having 10 of these get me in trouble? They're fun size. That's why I pass them out at Halloween. Yeah? Only one. I got my eye on you, bad man. Jim, that's not funny. That's not funny. I can't believe a clean comedian would talk about alcohol for a half an hour. All I can say is Cosby did worse. Yeah. Which would also be a great name for our bourbon. That is all for me. Thank you so much for coming.